Hey YouTube, it's 40 Watt Garage. Welcome to the channel or welcome back. This is day 2 of the Whitby Motor Cars tonneau cover installation. And we left off yesterday doing some calculations and some measurements. And I was getting a little confused and frustrated. So here's another shop tip. Sometimes you just gotta walk away from it and clear your head, whatever. It's amazing what a meal and a night's sleep will do, and you come back out and things kind of clear themselves up. My line of thinking is that I attack it backwards. That I install these 3 primary, call them the primary rear studs, which they are in a straight line. They don't follow a curve or an arc. They are spaced on the same straight line. Install these 3. Lock that down. Then, when those are snapped down and locked, then we can stretch the cover side to side, mark the studs that are at the rear of the door opening, stretch this, mark them, install those. Then I've got 5 fixed mounting points for the rear half of the tonneau cover. Then I can, with those fixed points, can stretch this forward, project some lines on the dash cowling, and then calculate the forward locations where these snaps are going to go, because these forward ones are going to be on an arc. That's my line of thought, and I think that's where we're going to attack this. Yeah, I'm going to mark 2 7/8. I'm going to step ahead a little bit because they want you to install the next 2, which are spaced 7 inches either side of these. So I'm going to make my marks out here at 2 7/8. Connect my lines. Now I need to measure center between my break and the stripes. And they are, it is exactly 1 inch. That is the point for my rear center lift the dot. Now 7 inches over on my car falls right here. Now to just check symmetry, just shy of 9/16 from the main stripe. Just shy of 9/16 from the main stripe. Here's where you may want to consider fudging those hard numbers, those hard measurement numbers, and for cosmetic appeal, what would look best, visually, and moving this stud to between my stripe, my accent stripe and the main stripe. I don't think that would look good. Or on this little stripe. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this for a little bit. Now I went and I grabbed just a couple of the retaining nuts from the parts kit. And just to help me visualize what having some shiny or some chrome things on the body of the car, that's at the recommended spacing or layout. And back to the recommended 7-inch spacing. Well, I think in my instance, I am going to follow the recommended spacing, 7 inches off center. To me, visually, I like that look. This is where you can kind of tailor things to your own taste, make your own decision, make your own determination. But I think I'm going to go with the recommended spacing. Okay, I've got my material set up. We're going to do the same thing as we did on the ferrules in the first lift the dots. So I'm going to start a little pilot hole, or lack of a better term, a little center punch, so my drill bit doesn't skate. Just using a little down pressure. And then these holes, you want to try to maintain being perpendicular to the surface. This has a little bit of a slope, so you will be square to the body and perpendicular to the surface. And just light, easy pressure, and be aware when your drill is going to break through. Again, I'm going to take the countersink, just gently twirl it, break that sharp edge, minimize my potential for chipping. And as before, I'm choosing to tap these holes to fit the threads for the studs. Give it another little twirl with the countersink. Tap may have raised that edge a little bit. Side benefit to my cup holder installation is I didn't return some of the rejected cup holders, so now they've become pretty handy little parts containers. So I am going to put on the flat washer. And thread these in. And again, just snug and a little tweak. Now we go to the inside. We're inside the trunk. I masked off my trunk light with some tape here because it was blinding the camera. I hope you can see this well. One addition I am going to make from what is in the instructions is I am going to use a pretty large fender washer under the bodywork on this stud. The idea behind that is to spread that clamping load out and across the widest area possible. I don't know how much tension or torque is going to be on these studs, but I don't think it's going to hurt. So and I have a wrench on the bodywork on the outside holding the stud so it doesn't twist while this nylock nut runs down. There, it's snugged up. I'm just using finger pressure. Now to do the other two. During my research for this project, I watched several other YouTube videos, mostly for boating or sailmaker type stuff, and that is where I found out how to use and where to procure the punch tool for these lift the dot fasteners. And some of the sites that I watched detailed the edge of the tool, and the edge of the tool is stamped Osborne 4020. So that is the model number of the tool. And this is the box that it came in. An Osborne Tool Company calls it a curtain fastener hand. So I'm assuming hand-operated curtain fastener. So you can look online for one of these. I think I paid about $60 for it, plus shipping. The other thing you need to know about lift the dots is they take 5 holes, one for the stud and 4 small ones for the little prongs. And then on the top of the fastener, see if I can get the glare to work for me, you see the dot where you lift the dot. On the back side, the dot is lined up with the 2 prongs that are closer together. There's close together and spread apart. The dot wants to go along whatever edge that you want to lift and release the fastener. So on the punch tool you have corresponding. You have 2 wide set, center hole, 2 narrow set. Well, just so I don't have to look every time and make sure that I'm doing it correctly, I marked my tool with a piece of white tape and I put a dot. So the dot is where the dot will go on the fastener. The other thing I gleaned from watching other videos is the procedure for using this tool, and some of them recommend having a thick rubber pad maybe like a rubber floor mat or something. Others use a block of softwood, pine, or a hunk of 2x4. And then they recommend that you lay a magazine or a piece of cardboard over the top, and then set the tool and strike it and punch your holes. So what I have here is a chunk of an old denim work shirt. This is where the buttonholes are. So it's already double thick, and I'm going to fold it in half to make it quadruple thick. And I'm going to punch my very first lift the dot hole. So I'm going to set the tool in place. I have a brass hammer, and let's just see how hard of a smack it takes to punch through this. That was a pretty good hit, and wow, it just popped right through. Now, before I move the fabric and misalign the layers, I'm gonna try to get the lift the dot. That just went right through the holes. And I have a beautiful hole. The other thing that I learned by watching other videos is the lift the dots have a backing washer, and it is belled. There's a concave and a convex surface, but one side, see if I can get glare to work for me again, but one side is stamped with the word dot just below the main big hole. And you want to be able to read the word dot, and dot goes to dot. These go together, and then they recommend bending these tabs inward with a needle nose plier that has the jaws taped to keep from scratching. I'm not going to waste one of my fasteners trying this out on a test piece, but that is the procedure. So how easy it is. The other way of doing this is to probably use one of these backing washers and mark the fabric somehow and use a razor blade to cut slits in your material. You have to do this about 25 times, and I think it's well worth the investment of the punch tool. You really kind of have to wail on it. There we go. And then, as before, I recommend setting the fastener into the holes you've created before you lift the material, because everything stays lined up. Turn it over, and we're ready to put the backing washer on. The tool has a large hole drilled through it, and I'm going to assume that is for clearing out your punchings. And we're good to go. Invest in the tool. So I guess it is time to bite the bullet and punch a hole through an expensive piece of canvas. I've got my dot mark, and you're going to want to lift this way to pop it loose. So I want my dot pointed this way. Another thing to note is that through hole in the tool is parallel to the snap prongs. So I guess the deal here is to line up your main big hole over your mark. See that you are parallel or perpendicular to what you want to punch, and I am not. So I'm going to rotate the tool a little bit. I just came up with another idea. This through hole in the tool is parallel to where you're going to place your dot, and a Sharpie marker fits right through that hole. So I'll get my tool set up, or my fabric set up over the block, and now I have a means of checking or seeing that I am perpendicular to the edge that I want to be. So I line up the center hole with where I want to punch it. Got this outrigger, and now I can see that I am perpendicular to that. And I just punched a hole through my top. And before I move it, I am going to set the fastener through the holes. Sorry about that. I'm going to take my backing washer with my dot symbol. I have some needle nose pliers where I wrap the tips with some electrical tape, and I'm going to get these prongs started bending in the right direction. And now go back and give them a final squeeze. And there is my very first lift the dot fastener. I installed the 3 primary rear lift the dot fasteners. I did fudge them rearward about 1/4 of an inch from center of the reinforced area. One of them is dead center down the center line of the tonneau cover with that center line we established early on. And then these 2 are 7 inches on center either side of it on the same plane, fudged about 1/4 inch back from center of the reinforced area. Now we will pull and stretch the fabric forward and start looking into our front locations. I'm beginning to think that all of my previous fretting over dimensions and lengths and stuff like that may have been for naught. With the installation of the 3 rear main studs, I've covered more of the dash with tape, and I am going to use some duct tape to try to stretch and secure the tonneau in place so I can really see where this front edge is going to truly wind up. Here is that center line mark that we established early on. So I'm going to stick that, and then the green tape represents the center line of the car. So if I can just get this stretched out, let the duct tape stick to the other tape, not my paint, and stretch this out a little bit in a few places. Here's that 4-inch offset mark, which lines up with the pencil line underneath. And we have my 4-inch mark on this side. What I've done is put some low-tack tape all the way around everywhere where the tonneau cover is going to lay down and touch. And then I've also stretched it and stuck it down with some tape in front. Now it's not drum head type, but it is stretched a bit. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a pencil and kind of draw a line on my underlying tape where the front edge of the tonneau cover is laying. Give me an idea of where that fabric is going to lay down, and I know that if I install a snap, I can still stretch it a little bit more and pull it tight. I can only stretch it so much with the duct tape, and the duct tape doesn't stick to the fabric very well, and it'll pull loose. So I know that I've got a little bit more stretch available. But I don't want to stretch it so tight that I'm putting undue stress on these front studs. Because again, they're just screwed into the fiberglass. And if you can see along here, drawing that pencil line, and here's the edge of the cowling. Pulled down a little bit, so yeah, my previous measurements and concerns were pretty much unfounded. I have got all kinds of room here on the flat of the dash cowling to put a stud. I mean, here's the edge, and I've got an inch and then an inch and a half of the reinforced area. So I'm pretty much free and clear to do anything I want with those front studs. I mean, this was my proposed center point stud, which I couldn't get my magic number when it was laying on the floor. But now I am well within range to put the stud right in the middle of the reinforced area. So I'm going to rethink my pattern and my layout for the front studs, and then I'll play connect the dots with my pencil line and draw a full width line across the front of the car, and we'll recalculate. But I do believe the key to this whole procedure was anchoring down these 3 points in the rear first, and then work forward. I measured the front edge of the tonneau cover again and made myself a new guide block. From the front edge of the tonneau cover, including the piping, back to the stitching of where the reinforcement ends is approximately 2 inches. And I set that on my original line. And then I have my middle of the reinforcement area line. And then set that and extrapolated, drew in my absolute rearmost line of where I have the reinforced area of the tonneau cover. So I've got my extreme front edge, my extreme rear edge, my approximate middle. So now I need to work on finding a compromise line somewhere between this area that I can hit all the way across on both sides and maintain the same setback. So my setback is going to be equal for the studs, and then we'll work on spacing. So, but I need to establish that setback line. I'm going to take a small square and set it try to find what is going to work out to be an average. As an average depth to put that row of studs in place. Well, I'm going to futz around with this for a while and see if I can come up with a number. Well, after quite a bit of time of trying different settings, different distances, etc., on my car, it seems to work out that 2 1/8 inch from where the dash cowling rolls over, 2 1/8 inch forward pretty much falls right down the center line, or well within the area of reinforcement on the front edge of the tonneau cover. The fasteners on the tonneau cover are kind of gonna be all over the place a little bit, but the studs will be in line. So I have a square set to 2 1/4, and now I'm gonna put it on the edge of the dash cowling and make some marks at that 2 1/8 inch edge that works for me on my car. Connecting the dots will give me a guideline as to where to place my studs on the dash.